I refused to babysit my nephew after breaking my leg, but my hospital room kept filling with families saying, "He needs you to help me." The nurse stopped in her tracks as I calmly said, "All right, let's read the x-rays together. There's something else you need to know." I, 28M, never thought I'd be writing this from a hospital bed, but here we are. 3 days ago, I was just another guy trying to make it through the week. Now I'm staring at x-rays that changed everything, and my family has no idea what's coming. It started when my sister called me last Tuesday morning. She needed me to watch my nephew Jake while she went to some important meeting. I'd been babysitting him every week for the past 6 months since her divorce, and honestly, I didn't mind. The kid was 8 and pretty easy to handle. But that Tuesday, I had plans. My girlfriend and I were supposed to go hiking, something we'd been planning for weeks. I told my sister I couldn't do it this time, that I had other commitments. She didn't take it well. She went on about how I was being selfish, how she was struggling as a single mom, how family should come first. The usual guilt trip. I held my ground though. For once, I was putting myself first. That afternoon, I was on the hiking trail with Sarah when it happened. One moment, I was stepping over what looked like a stable rock. The next, I was tumbling down a steep embankment. The pain in my leg was immediate and excruciating. Sarah called 911, and within an hour, I was in the emergency room getting x-rays. The doctor came back with a grim expression. My leg was broken in 2 places, but that wasn't the worst part. During the scan, they'd found something else. A shadow on my femur that shouldn't have been there. They needed to run more tests, but the word tumor was mentioned, possibly malignant. I spent the next 2 days in a haze of additional scans, blood tests, and consultations with specialists. The preliminary results weren't good. The mass was aggressive, and if it was what they suspected, I was looking at months of chemotherapy, possible surgery, and an uncertain future. But my family didn't know any of this yet. I'd asked the medical staff to keep the information confidential until I could process it myself. As far as everyone knew, I was just dealing with a broken leg. That's when the parade started. My sister showed up first, of course. She walked into my room with Jake in tow, looking frazzled and annoyed. She told me she'd had to miss her meeting because I wouldn't help her, and now she was behind on everything. She said Jake had been asking for me, and maybe seeing me laid up would teach me a lesson about family responsibility. I tried to explain that I was in serious pain and not exactly in a position to entertain anyone, but she brushed me off. She said I was being dramatic, that it was just a broken leg, and that people dealt with worse things every day. Then she asked if I could watch Jake for a few hours while she ran errands, since I wasn't doing anything anyway. I stared at her in disbelief. I was lying in a hospital bed with my leg elevated and wrapped, and she wanted me to babysit. I told her no, absolutely not. She got angry and said I was being selfish again, that this was exactly the kind of behavior that was tearing our family apart. After she left, my mother arrived. She'd heard about my accident and came to lecture me about how I needed to be more careful. But within minutes, she was also asking about Jake. My sister had called her, apparently, complaining about how uncooperative I was being. Mom suggested that maybe I could help out more once I got home, since I'd probably be laid up for a while anyway. Then came my brother, my aunt, and even my cousin. Each visit followed the same pattern. They'd express concern about my leg. Then somehow the conversation would turn to my sister's struggles and how I needed to step up more as an uncle. My brother actually suggested I could watch Jake from my couch once I was discharged, since I wouldn't be mobile anyway. By the 3rd day, I was furious. Not one of them had asked how I was really feeling or what the doctors had said beyond the obvious broken bone. They were all so focused on my sister's needs and my supposed obligations that they couldn't see past their own agenda. That's when my sister showed up again, this time with reinforcements. My mother and my aunt flanked her as she marched into my room. She looked determined and slightly desperate. She told me she had another important meeting the next day, something that could lead to a promotion at work. She needed me to commit to watching Jake regularly once I was released. I tried to interrupt, to tell them there were complications they didn't know about, but she kept talking. She said I'd been selfish long enough, that it was time to think about family. My mother nodded along, adding that I was young and healthy and could handle a little responsibility. That's when I lost it. I told them they had no idea what they were talking about, that there was more to my situation than they knew. My sister rolled her eyes and said I was being dramatic again, that everyone could see it was just a broken leg. She said I needed to stop making excuses and start acting like a real family member. I reached for the call button and asked for my nurse. When Jennifer arrived, I could see the confusion on her face as she took in the crowd of people surrounding my bed. I asked her to bring my latest x-rays and test results. My sister started to protest, saying this was between family and we didn't need medical staff involved. But Jennifer had already seen the tension in the room and the exhaustion on my face. She'd been my nurse for 3 days and knew exactly what was going on with my case. When she returned with the films and my chart, I asked her to explain everything to my family. The broken leg, yes, but also the other findings. The tumor, the biopsy results that had come back that morning, the oncology consultation scheduled for the next day. The room went completely silent. Jennifer clipped the x-rays to the light board and pointed out the fractures first, then the dark mass that had caught everyone's attention. She explained that the preliminary biopsy indicated osteosarcoma, an aggressive bone cancer. She mentioned the treatment protocol we'd be looking at, the surgery to remove part of my femur, the chemotherapy that would likely make me sick for months. My sister's face went white. My mother started crying. My aunt just stared at the x-rays like she couldn't process what she was seeing. But I wasn't done. I told them that for 3 days, they'd been coming into my room demanding that I take care of everyone else's problems while I was lying here dealing with cancer. Not one of them had bothered to ask if there was more to my situation. They'd all assumed I was being lazy or difficult, when in reality, I was trying to figure out how to tell them I might be dying. My sister tried to apologize, saying she didn't know, but I cut her off. I told her that was exactly the problem. She didn't know because she didn't ask. None of them did. They were so focused on what I could do for them that they never considered what I might be going through. I looked directly at my sister and told her that her babysitting problems were the least of my concerns right now. I had cancer. I was facing months of treatment that would leave me weak and sick. I might lose part of my leg. I might not survive at all. And she was worried about who would watch her kid while she went to meetings. The guilt on their faces was immediate and overwhelming, but I wasn't looking for sympathy anymore. I was angry. Angry that it had taken a cancer diagnosis for them to see me as something other than a convenient solution to their problems. My mother tried to say something about how they'd all help me through this, how family sticks together, but I wasn't interested in hearing it. I told them that for months, I'd been the one doing all the helping. I'd rearranged my schedule every week to watch Jake. I'd listened to my sister's complaints about her ex-husband. I'd been the reliable one, the one everyone could count on. But the moment I said no to one request, I became selfish. The moment I tried to prioritize my own life for once, I became the problem. I asked Jennifer to explain the treatment timeline. Surgery within 2 weeks, followed by 6 months of chemotherapy. I'd be in no condition to help anyone with anything for the foreseeable future. In fact, I'd be the one needing help. My sister finally found her voice and asked what she could do. I told her she could start by figuring out her own childcare arrangements, because I was done being her backup plan. I had bigger things to worry about now. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd all been so concerned about my selfishness when I was healthy. Now that I was actually sick, now that I had a legitimate reason to focus on myself, they were ready to be understanding. But it was too late for that. Update 1. The oncology consultation confirmed what we'd suspected. Osteosarcoma, stage 2. The tumor was localized but aggressive. Surgery was scheduled for the following week, followed by chemotherapy. The prognosis was good if we acted quickly, but the treatment would be brutal. My family's reaction was predictable. Suddenly, everyone wanted to help. My sister offered to bring meals. My mother wanted to move in to take care of me. My brother started researching treatment centers. The same people who'd been demanding I sacrifice my time and energy for their convenience were now falling over themselves to prove they cared. I appreciated the gesture, but I couldn't forget how they'd treated me when they thought I was just being difficult. The memory of my sister asking me to babysit from my hospital bed was still fresh. The way they'd all dismissed my pain and prioritized their own needs was something I couldn't unsee. I told them I'd handle my treatment on my own. Sarah had already offered to help, and she was the only one who'd been there for me without expecting anything in return. She was the one who'd called 911 when I fell. She was the one who'd stayed with me through the scary conversations with doctors. She was the one who'd seen me as a person, not a resource. My sister broke down crying, saying she was sorry, that she'd been overwhelmed and hadn't realized how much she'd been asking of me. She promised things would be different, that she'd never take me for granted again. But promises made in crisis don't mean much when they come from people who couldn't see your worth until you were broken. Update 2. The surgery went well. They removed the tumor and a section of my femur, replacing it with a metal rod. Recovery was painful, but the margins were clear. No sign of cancer in the surrounding tissue. During my week in the hospital post-surgery, my family visited regularly. They brought flowers, cards, and constant apologies. My sister had arranged for permanent childcare for Jake and kept emphasizing that she didn't need my help anymore. My mother cooked enough food to feed an army and froze it all for when I got home. But something had fundamentally changed in our relationships. I could see the guilt in their eyes every time they looked at me. They knew they'd failed me when I needed them to simply see me as a human being rather than a solution to their problems. The chemotherapy started 3 weeks after surgery. Sarah took time off work to drive me to appointments and stay with me during the worst days. She never once asked me to do anything for her. She just showed up, consistently, and without expectation. My family continued their guilt-driven support, but there was an awkwardness to it now. They were trying so hard to prove they cared that every interaction felt forced. My sister would call daily to check on me, but I could hear the obligation in her voice. My mother would visit with elaborate meals I was too nauseous to eat, then hover anxiously waiting for me to show appreciation. The truth was, I didn't want their guilt-motivated care. I wanted them to have seen my value before I got sick. I wanted them to have respected my boundaries when I was healthy. I wanted them to have asked how I was doing instead of immediately launching into what they needed from me. Update 3. 6 months later, I'm in remission. The chemotherapy is finished, and my latest scans are clear. Physically, I'm recovering well, though I'll always have the metal rod in my leg and a slight limp. Emotionally, things are more complicated. My family relationships have never fully recovered. We're polite, we stay in touch, but the easy closeness we once had is gone. They still feel guilty, and I still feel resentful. Not about the cancer, that wasn't their fault, but about how they treated me before they knew I was sick. My sister has become almost aggressively independent, refusing any help and constantly emphasizing how well she's managing on her own. It's like she's trying to prove she never needed me in the first place, which somehow makes it worse. The fact that she could have managed without me all along makes all those guilt trips feel even more manipulative. My mother tries too hard now, offering help I don't need and treating me like I'm fragile. She seems to think that being overly solicitous will make up for the months when she pressured me to prioritize everyone else's needs over my own well-being. The experience taught me something important about family dynamics and conditional love. When I was healthy and capable, my value was measured by what I could do for others. The moment I prioritized my own needs, I became selfish. But when I got sick, suddenly my needs mattered. It shouldn't take a cancer diagnosis for your family to see you as worthy of consideration. Sarah and I are stronger than ever. She's the one who saw me as a complete person from the beginning, not just a resource to be utilized. She's the one who supported me without keeping score, who helped without expecting reciprocation. Sometimes I wonder if my family would have learned to respect my boundaries if I hadn't gotten sick. Would they have continued taking me for granted indefinitely? Would my sister have kept guilting me into babysitting every week? Would my mother have kept pushing me to sacrifice my own plans for family obligations? I'll never know, because cancer changed everything. But I do know this. The people who truly love you will respect your boundaries even when it's inconvenient for them. They'll see your worth even when you can't do anything for them. They'll ask how you're doing before they tell you what they need. The rest is just guilt, obligation, and conditional love disguised as family loyalty. I'm alive, I'm healthy, and I'm finally surrounded by people who see me as more than what I can provide. It took cancer to get here, but maybe that's what it took for me to finally understand the difference between being needed and being valued. My leg healed. My cancer is gone. But the most important thing I recovered was my sense of self-worth and the knowledge that I deserve relationships based on mutual respect, not one-sided obligation.